Hi guys, in today's video we'll be looking at how you can write text files using either string variables or arrays of string that you've already got in your program. So let's jump into Visual Studio and take a look. So let's just fire up Visual Studio, create a new project. I'm going to call this one Writing Text Files. So in yesterday's video, we looked at how we could add a text file to our project, and we could make sure that it always copied to our output directory whenever we ran our program. And then we looked at how we can use that to guess the exact location of that file and then read it into a variable in your program. So today we're going to do the opposite. We're not going to add a text file in here. We're going to create one with our program. So in order to do that, we need to create a variable to write to the file. So we'll say var string for text file equals, and we'll just say this is my new file. But something else we did yesterday is we also looked at how you could read a text file into an array. And actually we can do the opposite as well. So we can create an array and then we can write that array to a text file all on separate lines. So we'll make an array as well, and we'll say var strings for text file as array. And we'll assign that as a new list string, and we'll put some default values in. We'll just say line 1, line 2, the row again appeared in there, and we'll do line 3. So we've got our array and we've got our piece of text there that we want to write to a file, and we'll actually make two files. Remember yesterday we also pulled in the IO namespace using the using terminology. So I'm going to just do using system.io. So quick point on these things. These may seem a bit confusing and you think like, crikey, how does he remember them all? You just start to learn about different objects in the framework as you go, and you sort of remember where they are. You can think of these kind of like folders. So no, I want to bring in this folder of code, I want to bring in this folder of code, and actually your program sits in its own namespace. So that's kind of like we've got our writing text files program here, and this is the top namespace. So that's kind of like your code folder as well. And if you had like another project that referenced this, they'd have to pull in your namespace, and it would have to say, you know, using writing text files, and pull in all of your program's code. So it's I know we've not looked at it yet, and I know it's probably just like sat there and you've been ignoring it, but it's really important, and it's actually not that confusing if you just think of it like folders. So anyway, let's start writing some text files. So we'll do file, and then there's actually a function in here called write all text. So we'll do that one first. And just like read all text, write all text needs a path to send that file to. So we'll need to create that. And then it needs a string for the contents of the file. So just like what we did yesterday, we'll need to create the path, and we'll use the environment object. And in there, we've got current directory. So that'll get us the folder that our program is running in. And actually, depending on what permissions the particular user running the program has, it may be that this is the only folder that they're actually allowed to write to. Windows has different security features in place to stop, you know, just any old program overwriting some files in your System32 directory and stuff like that. So this is something to watch out for, but typically speaking, you can always write and read from the current directory that your program is running in. So we'll do current directory, and then we'll add a string on the end, and we'll do a // and we'll add a file name. So we'll call this one single line from string.txt. And we actually also need to pass in some information there. So we have to also fill in this string contents, and we're just going to do that. This is my new file. We'll just paste that variable name in there. And if we run our program, it will actually write that into the folder we're currently running in. However, you may be thinking, well, how do I get to that folder? So one way is you can right click on your project and you can click Open Folder in File Explorer. But you need to make sure you're not right clicking on your solution because you don't get that option. So solution's kind of the top one with the purple icon. This green one with the C#, that's our project. We right click that, we can open the folder. And you'll see actually what we've got in here is a folder called bin. And the bin is where Visual Studio puts your program when it runs it. So we've got bin, and because we'll be running in debug mode, you see how we've got debug mode at the top here? You can actually run in release as well, but you can't put any breakpoints in when you run in release. If we go into the bin again, so we'll go into debug, and when we run our program, all of a bunch of files will get put in here essentially, and those are our program files. So the program that we write in C# gets compiled into a .exe file. Visual Studio puts that in this folder, and it also puts in like a load of other gubbins that you can probably ignore, and then it runs your program from there. So this is where any files that we create in the current directory will appear. So actually, let's just run that one. And we'll look at what happens in this folder. You see, just running the program there, we got our single line from text string from our little write all text call here. But we also got our writing text files exe, which is our program, and then there's a config file that goes with it, and then this PDB file is like a debug file that Visual Studio creates. But actually, what we could do is if we stop the program, we can go back into our debug folder. Let's just say we delete this file. We can actually run our program from in here just by double clicking it. And obviously we don't have a breakpoint when we do it that way. So the program just, I don't know if you saw it there, it flashes up for a second, but it did recreate this text file for us. And if we double click that one, you'll see this is my new file. Let me just pop that up like that. So we've created our, oh crikey, that window's behaving bizarrely. Created our text file. It's got the information in from our string for text file variable. Now let's look at creating a multi-line text file using our string array. So the process is basically the same. We'll just do file.write all, and we've got one called write all lines, and this one takes a path and it takes an array. So if we just look at the overloads, it also has one that takes enumerable string. So remember how I said before that arrays and lists are very similar. We can use a string array here, but we've actually got a list, and I always use lists. You can use lists or arrays, but I find lists a little bit easier to work with. But lists are a type of enumerable, so it also has an overload which takes those. There's also some information in here about encoding, because there's different ways you can write text files. I won't cover that in today's video. And what else we got? So enumerable, yeah. So we've basically got one that'll take an array and a path, one that'll take an enumerable and a path, one that will take an array, a path, and an encoding type, and one that'll take an enumerable, a path, and an encoding type. So the one that we're looking at today anyway is this one here, path and enumerable. So we'll pass in our path, and I'm just going to copy and paste our old path, but we'll do array file.txt, and then we just have to pass in our array. So we'll just grab this one here and we'll paste that there. And there we have it. We're calling the path and enumerable one, like I said. So if I'm just going to add a console.readline. Read line at the end there, and then we'll go ahead and run the program. And now we will check our debug folder, and now we have our array file. See there, and we've got our 3 lines which we specified in our array declaration up here. So yeah, that's the basics of writing text files. You can write them as strings, you can write them as arrays, and just like we did in a previous video, we could read those back as well, as long as we keep track of what the file names were. So you could write them in this way, and then you could read them using the previous video's method, and you'll notice how the files wouldn't actually be in our project, because our program is creating those files when it runs, rather than us creating them before we run the program. Hi guys, well done for making it to the end of the video. Just a quick heads up that there is a link to the project files from today's session in the video description. If you have any questions about anything we've covered today, feel free to leave me a comment. And as always, I will see you in the next one.